Natiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Gopidanna Vallabha Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Jaya Girivaradari Gopijanna Vallabha Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Yamunatiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Yamunatiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jai Jai Shri Shri Radha Madhava Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Damodar Ki Jai Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Devamrita Swamanita Namani Prachari Purvanakshanja Bhakta Charma Vinata Parartha Tapikaranyam Yasasave Chite Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamini Tinamini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyadesh Tarine Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we are reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Sorry. What's the message? Today we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the Grantaraj, the King of Books, 7th Canto, Chapter 4, Hiranyakashipu terrorizes the universe. Text number 43. Tasmin Mahabhagavate Mahabhage Mahatmani Hiranyakashipu Rajan Akarod Agham Atmaje Tasmin Mahabhagavate Mahabhage Mahatmani Hiranyakashipu Rajan Akarod Agham Atmaje. Tasmin Mahabhagavate Mahabhage Mahatmani Hiranyakashipu Rajan Akarod Agham Atmaje. Anyone else like to chant the shloka?
Tasmin Mahabhagavate Mahabhage Mahatmani Hiranyakashipu Rajan Akarod Agam Atmaje.
Tasmin Mahabhagavate Mahabhage Mahatmani Hiranyakashipu Rajan Akarat Agam Atmaje.
Tasmin Mahapakavate Mahabhage Mahatmani Hiranyakashipu Rajan Akarot Agham Atmaje.
Thank you. Prabhu's word for word translation says, Tasmin, unto him, Mahabhagavate, an exalted devotee of the Lord. Mahabhage, most fortunate. Bhaga, of course, meaning auspicious or good fortune. Mahatmani, whose mind was very broad. Hiranyakashipu, the demon Hiranyakashipu. Rajan, O king. Akarot, performed. Agham, very great sin. Atmaje, to his own son. Aga, of course, like our dear Agari Krishna, Prabhu. So Agari, the enemy of the sinful demon Aghasura. Krishna, who's the enemy of the sinful demon Aghasura. Such a cool name. We also have a god brother in New Zealand, Agahanta Prabhu, the destroyer of sin. Anyway, translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. My dear King Yudhishthira, this is of course Narada Muni still speaking to Yudhishthira. The demon Hiranyakashipu tormented this exalted, fortunate devotee, although Prahlad was his own son. Purport. When a demon like Hiranyakashipu, despite his elevated position due to severe austerities, begins to tease a devotee, he begins falling down, and the results of his austerities dwindle. One who oppresses a pure devotee loses all the results of his austerities, penances, and pious activities. Since Hiranyakashipu was now inclined to chastise his most exalted devotee's son, Prahlad Maharaj, his opulences began dwindling. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitam Cha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandhu Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. The verse again says, My dear King Yudhishthir, the demon Hiranyakashipu tormented this exalted, fortunate devotee, although Prahlad was his own son. Srila Prabhupada describes the fall down of Hiranyakashipu in the purport, beginning with teasing. First, Hiranyakashipu was teasing his own son for his devotion, and then he began actually chastising him, and then punishing him, and then, of course, even trying to kill him. And in this way, everything beneficial that Hiranyakashipu had accumulated as a result of all of his austerities, his tapasya, whatever good work he had done, began to dwindle, fade, and ultimately he got his guts ripped out. And he lost everything. Spoiler alert, it gets a little gruesome. But why is that? Why? I mean, here's Hiranyakashipu. His whole program is terrorizing the universe. That's the title of the chapter. The title was written, by the way, by some of our spiritual masters, Holiness Devamrita Swami. He wrote the chapter titles. So his whole program is there to terrorize the universe. So why is it that he has to lose everything? Why is it that his relationship with the devotee has any effect on his position, on his status, on his success? Why is because ultimately the highest truth, the highest reality is personal. And our whole fault, our whole misconception, the root cause of our ignorance and our suffering is a sort of denial of that personhood, both the supreme person and the interconnectedness of all the other persons. The very definition of material existence is an isolation from the supreme person, is an imagined separation from the supreme person, and the thinking that on my own everything is accomplished. This is the definition of our ignorance, of our illusion. And so it's no surprise that Hiranyakashipu, failing to recognize how his position is awarded by persons, sustained by persons, and can be lost at the hand of persons, it causes his downfall. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, hey, don't shoot the messenger. I'm, getting on everybody's case here, but the Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Prakritaha kriyamani gunai karmani sarvashaha ahankara vimudatma karta aham iti manyate. The English translation of which I can't exactly remember, but I'll just have to wing it. That being bewildered by the modes of material nature, a person is thinking, Karta aham, I'm the one doing everything. Karta aham. Ahankara vimuda atma. In this way, the person, the atma, the real person, the soul there, is vimuda, completely bewildered by false ego, thinking, Karta aham, I'm doing it all. It's all me. Everything that's been accomplished, everything that is sustained, and even if something is destroyed, it's all me. I'm the one that practically makes the sun rise. I'm the one that keeps everything afloat. If I weren't here worrying about everything, it would all fall apart. It's all me. And whatever I've done is all by myself. Whatever I've got, it's because of my own strength, my own power. This is the real American mentality, especially. We really like to lean into this individualism, self-exalted individualism. But the illusion, of course, is that none of that is true. None of it. And so if we interact with this world, thinking that we are an island unto ourselves, then that is the very definition of materialism. We become more and more entangled. Prakritaha. Prakritaha kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasha. Become completely bewildered by these modes of material nature, thinking, I'm the one doing it all. It's all by my strength and by my power. Actually, this couldn't be more false. Anyone who takes a moment of careful analysis will remember, of course, my body is awarded by my parents to people who got together to produce this body and to sustain this body, especially throughout my childhood and even in my adulthood. I'm completely dependent upon resources that are provided by the local government. Since I got some position on the local government here, I'm a lot more aware of, oh, wow, just that the road exists here. It took a lot of effort. There's a lot of people involved in making sure that there is a pathway here, or making sure that the water doesn't just enter into my basement, or that the electricity flows in the right way, or that when I flush the toilet, everything that I don't want to think about just disappears. There's a lot of energy involved in that. There's a lot of planning. There's a lot of maintenance. There's many, many people involved. But in ignorance, in illusion, we're thinking, no, no, it's all just me. I'm doing everything by myself. I'm so exalted. I'm so powerful. What is it? Siddhoham balavan api. I'm perfect. I'm powerful. Ishvaroham aham bogi. Because I'm in control. Then I'm really going to enjoy. Once I'm really in control, and there's nobody in my way, then I'll finally be happy. But the exact opposite occurs, as we're seeing here in the case of Hiranyakashipu. The more one attempts to isolate oneself, either in illusion or because of misfortune, actually, the more there is suffering, the more there is sadness. That part is self-evident. It doesn't even need some evidence, but I'll share anyway. That there's no doubt that this world is becoming more and more lonely, and as a result of that isolation and loneliness, the suffering is increasing exponentially. There was this interesting book that was published a little while ago, and it's become sort of a sensational series of articles and discussions called Bowling Alone. I mentioned this at one of our Bhakti Yoga Center programs, and then afterwards, some students came up to me, some students who study sociology and psychology. They said, oh, we've all been talking about this book and this phenomenon, bowling alone. Anyway, the author of this book did some sociological research and found that what should be obvious, that people are more isolated than ever before. And he said, interestingly enough, people are doing more things than ever before, but more disconnected than ever before. And he said one indication of that trend is how much bowling is taking place. There's a lot of bowling happening in America, you know, the game where you roll the ball down the lane and try to knock down all the pins. He said there's far more bowling happening now than ever, but the number of bowling leagues where people are playing together is like completely dropped off. And he said this trend can be seen all across the board in all sorts of activities. People are still trying to do things, but a lot less with other people. So bowling alone, this is the trend. There's more action going on than ever. There's more activity, there's more opportunities, there's more technologies, there's more facilities, there's more entertainment, but less doing it together. He gave all sorts of other examples, of course, about people dining in restaurants or celebrating social milestones, even marriages or producing children or whatever. Just there's less people involved in every activity. And so this is the very definition, the very symptom and definition of materialistic consciousness. Thinking, no, I'm do it by myself. I don't need anyone else. I don't want anyone else. Ishvaroham, aham bogi. I'll just be in control of my own little world. Siddhaham, that'll be perfect. Balavanapi, I'm strong. I don't need anybody else. But actually, it's all suffering. The suffering is off the charts. Even in first world countries where the comforts, the luxuries, the amenities are also off the charts. It's also better than anything that we know about in modern history. But actually, the suffering is increasing more and more. So the symptom of material consciousness, the definition, is as is being described by, or being demonstrated by Hiranyakashipu here, is thinking, I'm doing it by myself, and not recognizing that whatever I have whatever I've accomplished, whatever is sustained, whatever potential is there for me is the result of someone else. I'm connected to someone else. I'm dependent upon someone else. And especially in our spiritual life. That's the devotional mentality, the correction, the repair, the healing of that mentality, of course, is the devotional mentality. That it's because of Guru Deva, and it's because of all the great exalted devotees that I make any progress. Previously, when Gurudev was here, Gita Nagari, he said, this is bhava, seeing that any good fortune is the result of a devotee. This is bhava, and that's the spiritual consciousness. I'm not doing any of this myself. I'm the recipient of so much good fortune created by the other devotees, by my spiritual master, by the demigods, and ultimately by the Lord. But the atheistic mentality is the exact opposite. No, 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 it's all me. Look out for number one. I've always said that the atheist section of human society is very much like the teenagers of society, the teenagers of humanity. Just like a teenager lives within the home of the parents, 100% dependent, but still has this attitude like, I don't need anybody. I don't need you. I'm doing it myself. I'm going to my room, mom and dad. I don't need anybody else. While being completely dependent. So that, it's an illusion. Some of you might remember. I certainly remember my obnoxious teenage years of illusion, thinking that I'm so independent, I'm so strong, and so powerful, I don't need anybody. Actually, I took it way too far. Ran away from home and lived on the streets in the back of my 1976 Chevy Nova, thinking of myself to be on some profound spiritual journey, but actually it's just the arrogance of wanting to be independent and isolated. And it sounded glorious, but of course, I would go to my parents' home when they weren't there, when I knew they weren't there, to sneak in and steal the food and then go back out. So still completely dependent on every resource that I took advantage of, on every resources that I required. But still, in the atheistic mentality, we're thinking, ahankara, vimudatma, karta aham iti manite. I'm doing everything. Krishna is saying this so explicitly to us. I mean, really, this should be a jab to our ego, saying this is the bewilderment of material existence. It's all me. Karta aham. I do everything. I don't need anybody else. I don't need to supplicate myself before God or the demigods or someone who's their representative or someone who has some power. It's all me. So we need to be healed, my dear Prabhus. We're in the process of being healed. Being healed means recognizing. Now, personality is at the root of everything, not impersonality. The materialistic consciousness and the materialistic perspective is this reductionist view of everything. At the root of everything is just some quarks and some gluons, and now they got virtual particles. Life was simpler when it was just protons and neutrons and electrons, but it's like you blow those up, and then there's all sorts of other stuff. And now it's like, well, the virtual particles, the matter and the antimatter arising from fluctuations in the quantum fabric corresponding to each particle or whatever. Then they got to figure out what's the quantum fabric. This reductionist view of life just comes down to impersonal. And 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 the result, of course, is that there is no satisfaction. There is no real progress. There might be progress on a technological level. One might be developing all sorts of new technologies, the power to manipulate nature in more and more ways. And because of this development of new technology, people think, well, society must be progressing. Life, humanity, this world is not cyclical. It must be linear because after all, we see these new technologies developing. I often have this conversation at our Bhagavad Gita discussions on Wednesdays at the center. How we view life as linear progress just because of the technologies that are being made from this reductionist worldview. We'll just see, now we can download stuff, or now we have transportation technology. It's amazing how you can make a plane go so fast through the air. Or we have, any number of incredible technologies that are developed. And so we think, well, progress must be happening. But that's only if you look at that one metric. If you look at other metrics, like, for example, how much society is cohesive, no, there's not progress. There's definitely regress. So choose your metric. The perspective of the devotees, the perspective of the Vedas, the Vaishnavas, is that we're in the regressive part of the Kali Yuga. Just as a circle, as you're going around a circle, it's sometimes going up and then sometimes going down. We're on that down slope. It's called the Kali Yuga. It's not progress. There might be technological advancement, yes, but what is its value if people are bowling alone more than ever before? We might have great bowling lanes, we might have great bowling alleys, but people are bowling alone. So what is its value? So the reductionist worldview is one that tries to eliminate personhood. The spiritual worldview is just the opposite, recognizing that at every step, both in my material and in spiritual existence, there is a person involved, and that my interactions and relationship with those persons are essential, crucial. It's everything. Whether it's just my home, my town, the road that I drive on, didn't pop out of nowhere. It didn't just spring up. And then what to speak of my spiritual life, my progress is 100% the result of the mercy of other devotees, of my spiritual master, and ultimately of the Lord himself. This is the revolution of consciousness that we're trying to enact by bhakti. This is how we're trying to be healed in the association of the devotees, in the association of Srila Prabhupada by reading his books, and in the association of Shri Shri Radha Damodar by chanting their holy names. It's to come back to the personhood consciousness. Not that I do everything myself and I don't need anybody and I'm all powerful and I don't depend on anyone else. But to recognize I am interconnected with the Lord and all of his devotees. Even within this world, which is like a reflection of the spiritual world. Even within this world, all of the resources that we require, they're all presided over by persons, by demigods. In the spiritual world, literally everything is conscious. The ground upon which Krishna walks, the dust of Vrindavan is conscious, the trees, the flowers, the birds that are singing, all of the creatures, all fully conscious. The spoon that Srimati Radharani cooks with is fully conscious and excited to be engaged in devotional service to Radha and to Krishna. That's the spiritual perspective. But even in this material world, which is like a reflection of the spiritual world, there is consciousness everywhere, the demigods that preside over everything. It's just that in this material world, they are also somewhat attached to their bodies. And so there are some hiccups, there are some problems. But it's their opportunity to practice serving Krishna in various ways in the spiritual world, just like we do. So devotional service is all about healing that impersonalism, coming back to the personal conception. And that's why Hiranyakashipu is losing his exaltation because of his teasing a devotee first, and then chastising, and then of course punishing and even trying to murder. So this has a real effect on his real assets. That's the whole point here. That he is not isolated. He's not all powerful. Ishvaraham Mahambhogi. He's not actually in control by himself. Siddhaham Balavanapi. No, everything that he has, Hiranyakashipu, everything that he accomplishes, everything that he desires is also intrinsically connected with other persons. And disrespecting that relationship or denying that relationship results in destruction. In the case of Hiranyakashipu, the Lord himself made a stellar example. But maybe we don't need a stellar example. Perhaps we see in our own lives. The more I deny my symbiosis with other devotees, with other living entities, even with the non-devotees and with the Lord, the more I deny that and abandon that, thinking that I'll do it all by myself, karta aham iti manyate, then actually the more that I suffer. We should just come to terms with this. When are we going to make this incredible transformation of consciousness, which is the fundamental of spiritual life? That ultimately the personhood is primary. That ultimately our own consciousness is contingent upon the supreme consciousness. And I cannot be separated from it at any moment. A recognition of that contingency upon the supreme consciousness is the definition of spiritual life. But a denial of such is the very definition of our material life. So let us learn from Hiranyakashipu and his example. He attained his exalted position by the grace of Brahma, and he's going to lose it by thinking himself separated and isolated, thinking that there's no one above him, that he does it all by himself. Karta aham iti manyate, just thinking like this. And then, of course, the incredible Lord Nrsingadev, the Adbhuta Shringham, the most wonderful form, Adbhuta Shringham, very incredible form of Lord Nrsingadev, will remind us that actually he's very connected. And in the case of Hiranyakashipu, his guts were connected to the Lord's razor-sharp fingernails. So we should be so fortunate as to have the Lord come and remind us of our connectedness to him. But we can't even imitate the demoniac nature of Hiranyakashipu. So let's learn the smart way and remember that at every step, I am sustained, nourished, and supported by the mercy of the devotees. Gurudev said, this is bhava, to see all good fortune as the result of the devotees. It's bhava because it's real. That's the real spiritual perspective. That's the reality. That all of my good fortune, all of my progress is simply the mercy of the devotees and of the spiritual master. And by that alone, I progress in Krishna consciousness and come back home, back to Godhead. And if we should forget, then please take a moment to review the history of your spiritual life and remember which person at which stage along the way has lifted us up, become the wind beneath our wings. This is bhava, this is ecstasy. And I do it all the time. To recall the first devotee that I met, the ones that guided me, the ones that tolerated my nonsense back at Gori Yoga in Wellington, New Zealand. Oh my God, there is no shortage of nonsense. But these exalted devotees were so patient, so tolerant, lifting me up at every moment, encouraging me to engage in devotional service at every moment. Without which, where would I be? I would still be that depressed 18-year-old kid thinking, I don't need anybody, I'm going to figure it all out myself. Some people never grow out of that. They'll spend many, many lifetimes in that atheistic, immature teenager mentality. I don't need anybody. I don't need you, mom and dad. I'll do it all myself. It's pathetic. So at every moment and at every step, we're so dependent upon the mercy of the devotees that it is bhava, this ecstasy, to remember that. And if we are fully convinced of the ecstasy of remembering how we are products of the mercy of the devotees, then we should also give that mercy out to others. We should see, wow, somebody did it for me. I can do it for others. I can also be available to support, to be available to guide if someone seeks it, or even just to give prasadam, to encourage someone to chant the holy names. There's unlimited opportunity to see how that connectedness is what brings all success. That yoga in devotion, that bhakti yoga, that connectedness is what brings all success. Not this kartaham iti manyate, not this American mentality that I'm so independent, I do it all myself. So that is the sum and substance of the Sankirtan mission, of course. By recognizing that we're the product of the mercy of the devotees, then we can see that I can give that mercy to others as well. I can encourage others to chant the holy names, to take prasadam, to hear and chant about and to remember Lord Krishna so that they can be connected to the spiritual reality and give up the illusion of isolation, independence. Actually, it's just so wonderful at every single step. It worked for us, so it can work for others. So I highly recommend it. Hare Krishna. Uh, anyway, I think I've made my point very clear. In the case of Hiranyakashipu, that's why his falling down, his relationship with the devotee, is affecting all of his success because he is connected. He is not isolated, and we are the same. Let's not be like Hiranyakashipu. Let's learn from his mistake and cultivate the fundamental, the essential spiritual quality of connectedness with the Lord, with the devotees, and with all living entities. Hare Krishna. Grantaraj, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. So stop there. Ask if any of the devotees have any questions or comments or thoughts about what has been said. It's all pretty obvious, I think.
Prabhu, I want to thank you for a very nice class. It's a wonderful meditation thinking about how Hiranyakashipu was affected by his interactions with Prahlad. His interactions were offensive. He was disrespectful to the extreme. I had the good fortune of hearing this portion of Srimad Bhagavatam directly from Srila Prabhupada's lotus lips in Mayapur. He gave class on this chapter every day, and one of the points that he emphasized was how Lord Nrsimhadev, Krishna, was so very extremely protective of Prahlad, his devotee, and how extremely angry he was toward Hiranyakashipu for his offenses, his extreme offenses towards Prahlad. Srila Prabhupada elsewhere gave the example of a parent and a child. That the parent is very protective of the child and will never tolerate any offense against the child. If anyone is offensive towards their child, a parent acts like fire, very, very defensive. They will never tolerate even slight offenses against the child. They may tolerate offenses against themselves. They may not take some slight very seriously, but the same sort of slight directed towards their child, they cannot tolerate. So, Srila Prabhupada's narration of this portion of Srimad Bhagavatam, for me, culminated in the actual appearance of Lord Nrsimhadev and Srila Prabhupada's description of that event. And in that description, particularly, Srila Prabhupada described the intensity of the anger of Lord Nrsimhadev. He went into some detail describing the appearance of the Lord. And for those who have not had the experience of Srila Prabhupada giving transcendental descriptions of Krishna, any of his avatars, or Goloka Vrindavan or any transcendental situation. Srila Prabhupada's descriptions were um, just incredible. It would absolutely transform you. You would be there and you would see, directly, transcendently, you would experience what Srila Prabhupada was describing with an intensity. So Srila Prabhupada's description of Lord Nrsimhadev was like that. Um, for the devotees present at the time, they witnessed the appearance of Lord Nrsimhadev, and for myself, I was Srila Prabhupada had engaged me in taking care of the cows. So many days I was at the Goshala during Srimad Bhagavatam class, but they had these gigantic speakers on top of the Lotus building, broadcasting in all directions, all around Mayapur for like a mile. Everyone could hear the class. It was a little hard to hear from the Goshala, so I would walk some distance towards across didn't actually go through the rice paddies, but at least, through there was a large banana grove. And so on the plea of having to relieve myself, I excused myself from the other Prabhu that I was working with and slipped away to where I could hear a little bit better. And I was able to catch Srila Prabhupada's description of the appearance of Lord Nrsimhadev. And he was, at that moment, going into some detail about the Lord's appearance, the appearance of the hair on his body, is how he was uh, dispersing the clouds in the sky. His body was huge, and actually moving the clouds around. But many wonderful descriptions he gave. But what really struck me and has stuck with me to this day, I still have this picture in my mind. He described the anger of the Lord as being so intense that Lord Nrsimhadev's eyes were crossed in anger. And you may sometimes see paintings like this. They're a little bit rare. There was one such painting commissioned by Srila Prabhupada that was done by a devotee, in which Lord Nrsimhadev appears like that with his eyes crossed. I have seen rarely paintings like that, but that was Srila Prabhupada's description. Unfortunately, for some reason, I have never been able to find a recording of that day's class, and I have searched extensively for years. Somehow it does not appear to exist, and that happens sometimes due to various unfortunate circumstances. Sometimes things were not recorded. There was sometimes not a tape available, or somehow or other the recorder failed. Someone didn't properly depress a button or whatever, and sometimes it didn't happen. Sometimes Hari Sari was very ill or whatever. Different things happen, but somehow we don't have that recording. But that image, very powerful and dramatic, still stuck in my head, still seeing this incredible appearance of the Lord with the intensity of his anger. Every muscle in his body tensed in anger, even the muscles of his eyes tensed in anger to the extent that his eyes crossed. So angry because of his mood of protecting Prahlad against the offense of Hiranyakashipu. So anyway, it serves to underscore the importance of properly regarding devotees, because it's something that Krishna takes so very seriously. His devotees are very dear to him, all of them. Anyone at all. We have it from our acharyas that You cannot offend even the least of the devotees. You know, it doesn't matter how long one has been a devotee or how big or small one may be. Anyone who has even once chanted name of Vishnu is regarded as a Vaishnava and very specially regarded by Krishna. So we have to be very careful in our dealings with devotees, always very, very respectful of every devotee. Sometimes devotees make mistakes and intentionally or unintentionally, commit an offense against a devotee, and they immediately experience devastation in their spiritual life. All of their advancement is destroyed. Everything is ripped away, and they again become a mouse. They lose their taste for hearing and chanting, and they can no longer control their senses, and they fall down. If one is very offensive, sometimes terrible calamities may occur in one's life. Shastra describes various types of terrible consequences, but Krishna does not tolerate offenses. And the ultimate example is Prahlad and Hiranyakashipu. That was very, very extreme. It's a wonderful story because it both glorifies Krishna's devotee. All the wonderful qualities of Prahlad Maharaj are fully manifested in the story. But also, ultimately, there's the terrible um, consequences of offending such a devotee. It's very instructive. Anyway, I wish I could direct one to a recording of that class, but it appears it does not exist. Incredible class, absolutely incredible. Uh, anyway, that's my comment. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. We're so fortunate that we get to hear about Prabhupada's ecstasy in describing Lord Nrsingadev from you. Thank you for sustaining that memory. I will try to sustain that and tell others as well what Srila Prabhupada said. Yes, a wonderful pastime. Dear Agari Krishna Prabhu, do you want to take us home, both in terms of this group discussion and also back home, back to Godhead?
Uh, Harba Prabhu, my, I guess, aeronautical technology can't even take us beyond the Van Allen field of radiation,
Uh-oh.
so there's no going back to Goddard. Sorry. Yeah, so thank you so much, Prabhu, for a very inspirational class. So with regards to Kartaham iti manyate, the verse, so Prabhupada in the purport 327, he says that due to his long misuse of the senses in sense gratification, he's factually bewildered by the false ego. So the mechanism there that Prabhupada is highlighting of basically Hiranyakashipu becoming bewildered as independent of personality and being dependent on somebody else for his position as the emperor of the universe is a long misuse of the senses. So Prabhupada, even in the same chapter, Bhagavad Gita, he also describes that lust is born of contact with Rajaguna. And we see that even with practicing devotees, that it's not that lust ever goes away, it stays there. You just have to exercise self-control. Self-control or sense control is built into the practice of Krishna consciousness. So my question relates to just creating how to, is it like you're just managing your life in Krishna consciousness, um, so that one doesn't get bewildered by the false ego? Or how can you like uh, just create sufficient separation from the false ego and not be bewildered by the false ego, because we're in constant contact. We see that, even in, yeah, just being in America, the consciousness of thinking that, okay, Kartaham iti manyate, I am actually independent. It's just because you're in contact with the society. You can't help but be part of the credit system. Most of us aren't born into the silver spoon with the silver spoon in our mouth. So due to contact, there is a degree of bewilderment. So how do we achieve sufficient separation by not taking the extreme of being too childlike? Um, like Prahlad Maharaj in, it's like he's in the body of a boy, young boy, and therefore it's quite appropriate for him to be almost oblivious, right? Because he doesn't have duties. But then when you're in an adult body, you can't be neglectful. But the price of not being neglectful of your duties is the skartaham iti manyate. Um, so how do you follow in the footsteps of Prahlad Maharaj, but not to the extreme of like just being oblivious and neglectful of basically taking care of keep duties of keeping body and soul together.
Hare Krishna. I your analysis is always so in depth, and I'm very much like a very simple person. Uh, just as you're saying that, like you're come to America and you've probably noticed the difference in the mentality here, that independent mentality and that individualistic mentality, and then you can be affected by that if you're here and associating with persons who are similarly vain. So similarly, if we're associating with devotees, we'll be protected from false ego, of always remembering that actually I'm dependent upon these devotees, and these devotees are dependent upon the Lord, and we're all dependent upon the spiritual master and upon Sri Sri Radha Damodar. And by having that sangha, of course, everything stays very clear. I think our biggest problem is when we simply don't associate. And I'm sorry I don't have a more complex answer, but it's an answer that works for all situations. It's that the association is so crucial. And it's especially important for us grihastas or aspiring grihastas is that the tendency is to isolate. Gurudev told me this explicitly many times, that that's why the Grihastha ashram is described as a deep, dark well, is that we tend to isolate. And we think, well, I'm doing my own thing and I got my own stuff and I'm busy with my own thing. And I'll see the devotees when I want to, if I want to. And I can imagine myself connected when I feel like it. But this is the danger, especially of our household life, is that tendency to become isolated is very strong. And of course, we've seen so many times that devotees, for whatever reason, they don't want to associate much, and then they just slip away and then they disappear. We've seen it so many times. And so I think our only protection against that is to always associate whenever we get an opportunity, and not just when I feel like it or when I think it's really convenient or only if I like this particular one. But we have to stay connected in this way, free from the false ego of thinking ourselves independent and kartahamiti manyate. That's just the level where I'm at, Prabhu, and what I'm working on. I I'm not as good at really analyzing the details as you are. I try to stick with the basics. So when there's an
Thank you, Prabhu.
opportunity, try to associate with the devotees, and even if there's some inconvenience. Like just yesterday, like now I'm doing the whole single parent thing because Nandini's out of town. She's in New York. So we have our Wednesday night thing, and that's why I asked you actually to cover it because I wasn't able to. But then, so I thought, well, I'm just gonna have to cancel. I got to pick up Radha from their ballet, and I got all these parental duties. But I just like swung it. I just tried to work out a way where I could do it. We had a short one because I want to associate even with these aspiring devotees. It's like I'm not thinking like, well, I don't need them. I've been a devotee for so long. What do I need these people? They're all like, they're just new bhaktas. It's like, no, but I realized I need that association too. I need it. So I got to make some arrangement. So we had a shorter program. And then the guy who was there on Thursday, Ahmet from Turkey, then he came and he's like this Sufi Muslim. So he's like really interested. He's very spiritual and he's very interested asking all these great questions about Ishopanishad. And I was like, as I was leaving, I had to rush, of course, to go and pick up Rhonda. And I was leaving, I was thinking like how much I really need this. It's not just me trying to give to these newer devotees. You know, Corey was there and Hunter and Sophia and Baba. But actually, I need it. I need to have that Sangha. I need to have Sangha with newer devotees. I need to have Sangha with exalted devotees like yourself. I need to have Sangha with Tarika Prabhu. I need to have Sangha with Gurudev. I need to just got to get it. And I think our only problem is when we make some excuse thinking that there's some reason why I don't need to, I don't have to. And then, yeah, all that false ego pops up. So I'm sorry it's not a very complex answer. That's just the level that I'm at. But it's been working. It's been working so far to try to just get Sangha whenever possible. Hare Krishna.
Thanks, Prabhu. It's a very satisfying answer, actually, because um, if you think about even assimilating knowledge, part of the learning process is you actually have to teach someone. So the best way
Mm,
to assimilate something is to teach.
mm,
So as part of Sadhu Sangha is actually bidirectional. It's not
mm,
just uh, getting a download from the Parampara downloads, but in order for you to actually practice, you need to upload, if you like, or download it to somebody else
mm,
and actually teach. So yeah, you've just added, it's necessary. It's actually as part of one weekly routine, you need to actually share what
mm.
you've heard, and that's impacted your heart. So thank you so much, Prabhu. It's actually a very complex answer, Sadhu Sangha. So it
Amen to
satisfied,
that.
yeah, it satisfied my analytical aspect of, just the banter Bhagavatam class. So thank you.
Hare Krishna. I value and appreciate your analytical nature. I like it. I'm just not as smart as you are. But yeah, absolutely testify that teaching is such an important part of learning, and we should do that. Hare Krishna. I think we need to finish, unless Tarika Prabhu wants to say one more thing.
Yeah, I just thought I should add that, with regards to Gary Prabhu's question, becoming oblivious is not necessarily a bad thing. Um, we should be attentive to our duties, of course, but there is a stage of advancement in Krishna consciousness when one naturally becomes so absorbed in this or that aspect of Krishna consciousness that the absorption is so complete that it is to the exclusion of everything else, um, and that's okay. That's supposed to happen. That's a natural side effect of the progress of Krishna consciousness. Um, but that's a very advanced stage of Krishna consciousness, and we should not be trying to imitate or utilize uh, over absorption as an excuse for becoming negligent of some aspect of our life somehow. We should be attentive to every detail, but we should know that there will come a day when we will become oblivious to all kinds of things because of the extent of our absorption in Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhus, for participating in this connection of community and of hearing and chanting about our Lord Sri Sri Radha Damodar and our Acharya, Srila Prabhupada, and the great exalted devotees like Prahlad Maharaj. So many lessons to be learned. May everyone have a fully blissful day of Krishna consciousness. May you conquer Lord Krishna with your love and become a pure devotee in this lifetime and go back home, back to Godhead. Om Tat Sat. Thanks a lot. Hare Krishna.